So the iMap team is located in the New York Natural Heritage Program, and we are a partnership between the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry. Our mission is to facilitate conservation of New York's biodiversity by providing comprehensive information and scientific expertise on rare species and natural ecosystems to resource managers and other conservation partners.
So we're most well known for managing iMapInvasives. We work on some other projects as well, including LIISMA. And so we focus on invasive species, as many on the call here do as well. The example I have here is southern pine beetle, which is a big concern in Long Island, as you've heard mentioned a few times today. So it enters into pine trees and burrows through the tissue beneath the bark, and trees have some resistance to this, but with these large infestations, their defense of secreting resin is not enough, so trees end up dying within a few months. So the picture on the top is from its native range in the southeastern US, but it has since expanded into New York State, including Long Island. And so it's a huge threat, but what do we do about invasive species? So there's been a lot of research into this question. One of the main ideas is that it depends on what the progress of the invasion is so far, so where it is on this invasion curve. So when the species is not here yet, you can focus on prevention. If it's here, but in small numbers, maybe you can still eradicate. If it's here in pretty established populations, but not everywhere, you can at least contain it and not let it spread to the uninvaded areas, and so on. And so in order to strategize how to deal with invasive species, we really need to know the current distribution of invasive species. For example, this is the distribution of the southern pine beetle. So you'll see a lot of points in Long Island, both confirmed presences and also some suspected presences. And some of these are actual records of the species in trees, and some are trap catches. So most are in Long Island, but you'll see there have been some catches of this beetle in the lower Hudson Valley and even way up in the Albany Pine Bush Preserve. And in the context of New York State, so this map shows areas, shows the relative susceptibility to southern pine beetle of forests across New York State. I'm sorry if you hear my cat meowing right now, but I'll just keep going. So what I wanted to mention was that Long Island is clearly the high risk area in New York State, but you'll see that there are many other areas across the state that are susceptible to southern pine beetle as well. And so in Long Island, we really need continued survey of pines for southern pine beetle, because we need to understand its distribution and strategize where to manage it in Long Island to protect the central pine barrens, for example. And we also want to contain it where it is. So we don't want it to spread to the rest of New York, where it's still generally in the early detection and rapid response stage, especially north of the Hudson River Valley, or north of the lower Hudson River Valley. All right, and so to fill that need for tracking invasive species distributions, we've the invasive species database team at the New York Natural Heritage Program manages iMapInvasives. So iMapInvasives is used by several jurisdictions across North America, and in New York, we use it as the centralized invasive species database to support PRISM, state agencies, and other partners working on invasive species issues. And iMapInvasives can be used for a number of things. So we provide species distributions and reports. There are early detection alerts. So if if a high priority invasive species like southern pine beetle or other insects like spotted lanternfly, species like that, there are automatic email alerts that fly to workers, DEC biologists, to identify and confirm these records so that there can be a rapid response. And anyone is actually able to sign up for these email alerts if they have an iMap account. And we also provide web map services, so the data is available to use in ArcGIS and other programs. And also we allow for tracking control efforts and results. And we have a lot of data from partner organizations, so state agencies, water managers, researchers, museum data, but a hugely important data source of iMapInvasives is professional and citizen scientists across the state. So thank you to everyone on this call, because you are very important data sources for New York State invasive species work. And because we really rely on this continuous flow of data into the database, we have developed several ways for people to report data. Oh, and I also mentioned that species IDs are confirmed by experts. So it's great to hear that Bill and Lindsay have been chipping away at Long Island data to confirm some of the records that have been put in through the years. So we worked on the basic, or Meg called it the classic mobile app. So that is how you can report presence and not detected points, so points only. So it's really the most simple data collection tool we have, and it does not require connectivity. A lot of our partners need to be able to report more complex data, so lines, polygons, treatment data. So there's also an ability to report invasive species through the web interface. But to do that, you need to go onto the online website, which requires connectivity. So this isn't always feasible out in the field. And some of our partners need to collect this advanced data, but out in the field without connectivity. So we've also developed this iMap Mobile Advanced app that John's been working on for a while. You can report point, line, and polygon records, and you can report presences, not detected species, and treatments. And you can do all of this without connectivity once you configure the app. And we'll go over that today. And so all of this data is crosswalked to the iMap database. And so these are all these different paths into the iMap database. And from there, email alerts are prompted, and these data are available in the web map services. Oh, and I should mention, we are going to have a question period at the end, but you can also type in any of your questions into the chat box now, or as questions arise. And this is just a little chart to summarize those differences between the data collection tools. So the iMapInvasives mobile app is the easiest to use, simple data collection tool. You can collect simple data without connectivity, but you cannot collect treatment data or lines and polygons. Using the online web application, you can report that advanced data, but you need internet. And then iMap Mobile Advanced, or iMMA, you can do all of this advanced data and do this without connectivity. And so that brings me to welcome you all to the first season where iMMA is used across New York State. We're very excited to have partners using this to report advanced invasive species data. And what we'll be talking about today is, well, I just gave an introduction and background. I'll give a little bit more overview on ArcGIS Online and iMap Mobile Advanced. And then we're going to have a live demo from John of using iMMA in the Collector app. And then I'm going to go over using offline Basemaps and syncing the data, as well as data management. And then we'll go through questions at the end. So what is ArcGIS Online? For those who have not used it, it's Esri's web mapping platform. There's more than just maps. You can store data on the cloud, GIS data on the cloud. ArcGIS Online connects to multiple mobile app platforms, including Survey123, Quick Capture, and Collector. And there are also some spatial analyses that can be performed on the cloud. And ArcGIS Online really allows for collaboration, so you can work across organizations, and there's an ability to make data and maps public where appropriate. And to get started, you need to have an ArcGIS Online organizational account to access iMap Mobile Advanced. So typically, that's where your employer has their organization on ArcGIS Online, and employees have organizational accounts. So once you figure out that, you can send us an email of your ArcGIS Online username to iMapInvasives@dec.ny.gov. And at that point, we can add you to the group, and you can log in and accept that invitation. And once you've accepted that invitation, then you'll be able to use iMMA in the Collector app. If you have any questions about that, feel free to put those into the chat box. And I do want to mention that when you search the App Store for Collector, you will probably find two different apps. So there's the general Collector app, and there's also Collector Classic. We recommend Collector, the general Collector app. So it'll just say Collector or Collector for ArcGIS, but it will not say Classic. And then once you download that, you sign in with your ArcGIS Online account, and you should be able to find the iMap Mobile Advanced map. And so for the regular Collector app, the reason we recommend that is because you can choose multiple offline areas. There's also the one downside is that you can't use some of these large maps that we've created. But you can use those in the Collector Classic app. The only reason you would really need those would be if you surveyed for invasives in a very broad area, so Long Island as well as the rest of New York State, for example. So the general workflow is that you collect data on this mobile tool on your device, and then you upload it to ArcGIS Online. And then from there, the data is crosswalked from ArcGIS Online to the iMap platform. It automatically transfers these into iMapInvasives records. And it does this once you review and mark the ArcGIS Online records as ready to upload. And since there's that review process, these records are treated as confirmed, with the confirmation method being that this is partner data. And since this is confirmed data going into iMap, email alerts may be triggered when these data are uploaded. And one thing to keep in mind as we talk about this further and during John's live demo is the iMap3 data schema. So all records in iMap have this parent searched area record. So it represents where you searched for invasive species. And then presence not detected in treatment records can be added to that searched area record. So there can be points within the searched area or polygons where the species was found. You can tag species that were not found to the searched area, and you could also enter treatment polygons as well. But there's this searched area that is the parent record to all other specific records. And so a very important part of using iMMA is offline base maps. So the Collector app uses georeferencing information from the base map to accurately collect GPS locations in the field. And so it will not work if you don't have a base map set up. And if you are outside of connectivity, you really need the offline base map set up. So this is the only way to ensure that you can continue to collect information when you go out of cell or internet service. And so there are two ways to do this. One is a generic base map with aerial imagery. And you download this directly within the Collector app. That's suitable for Long Island and for small, like county-sized areas. If you work in a much larger area, then we have these NYNHP created prism-wide offline base maps for larger areas, not including Long Island, because that area is a sufficient size for using these generic base maps that are available within Collector. And so really most situations, the offline areas within the Collector app is where you want to go. So use the regular Collector app. The only case in which you would want to use the Collector Classic and use one of our prism-wide maps would be if you do invasive species work across a large area, Long Island and beyond, and you don't know where you're going to be in advance. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later on in the presentation. And if there's still some confusion about this, feel free to enter questions into the chat box. And with that, the next thing coming up will be John's live demo.
Excellent. Thanks, Mitch. Before I get started, I just want to let Lindsay know that I'm going to try to share the screen from the tablet I have here in a moment. So in case there's any special permission I need to do that on my Zoom, just let me know. So essentially what I'll do is go through a quick demonstration just to give you a sense of the functionality we have in iMap Mobile Advanced. And I'm going to be running the regular Collector for ArcGIS app on Android. And so if you've seen any of our presentations in the past 2 months or so, this is a new update for Android. So this presentation will be a little bit different, using the latest platform that Esri has released. And the other reason why that's helpful is because now the Collector for Android and Collector for iOS, for iPhones and iPads, now look very similar. So that should be very helpful. So if you're running an iPhone, it should look fairly similar. And so please bear with us if we encounter any technical difficulties doing the screen sharing from the tablet. Normally it's worked fairly well. And also location services have been disabled just for the purposes of this presentation, but I'll let you know some of the features of the using your GPS that make it very useful to use Collector. So what I'll do is go through an overview of the app itself. I'll then walk through creating a few records with the searched area, presence, present species, not detected, and treatment. And then depending on time, I'll talk a little bit about the offline base maps, but I think we might just do that via the PowerPoint slides as well. So I'm going to go ahead and attempt to share my screen. And let's see here. There we are. Okay, perfect. That was easy. So essentially, I'm here on the Android tablet, and I'm just going to go ahead and launch the Collector app icon right in the center of the screen. And so for the purposes of this presentation, I'm already signed in. And so this is the view you should see in Collector once you're signed in on in the app with your ArcGIS Online account, as Mitch referred to earlier. So if you are an active ArcGIS Online user, you may see something that looks sort of like what I have here. I have a lot of maps that I work with. This is basically just listing all of the maps that you have available in ArcGIS Online, primarily those that you have created. Now, to access our offline or our iMap Mobile Advanced tool, you'll likely need to go into the group that we've shared with you to access the map. And so for my collector, this is going to be towards the bottom under the groups section. And I'm going to select iMap Mobile Advanced, which is the third option currently on the screen. And at that point, oops, let's see here. Okay, well, it's prompting me to sign in, but I'll just jump right into the map. So you may be prompted to sign in on your device as well. But I'm just going to go right ahead and load our iMap Mobile Advanced map. And first, I'll just give you a quick overview of the collector app itself. So we're right here in the map interface. You can see that I can essentially pan the map and zoom around. We can see, we already have a number of partners using this tool, so you may see additional data that others are collecting out in the field. And so that's sort of the primary way of navigating around the map. If you have a location enabled through your GPS, likely the app will jump right to your location. And you can also select this target icon sort of in the upper right, which would jump right to your location. So next, I'll go through this very top menu bar. And essentially, we have three icons. The first is layers. And this just brings up the full list of layers that we have made available in our iMap Mobile Advanced tool. And so for the purposes of using the tool, you'll probably just want to keep those enabled at all times so that you can see the records that you're creating. Next is a search icon. I haven't had much luck using this search icon. I believe it's used to help search for features and locations. However, particularly when offline, I haven't found that to be all that useful. So just letting you know that that's there. It's the magnifying glass icon in the upper right. And finally, then we have this 3-dot menu in the upper right. And that will expand a menu to provide some more options, including the base map. Here you can toggle different layers that Esri has available, such as aerial imagery, topo maps, those types of things. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to leave it on this very basic map because we found for WebEx and Zoom, if it's the aerial imagery, it causes some problems refreshing on for the attendees. So I'll just keep it on the very basic map I have here, but you can certainly toggle a number of different options that Esri has. So also from this menu, if you'd like to see what the different layers on the map are, what they're representing, you can view the legend here. If you're familiar with iMap Online, we've tried to make this match as much as we can. So the searched areas being purple, presences being green, treatments being brown or darker colors. So that lines up pretty well with what you'd find on iMap Online. Finally, there's also a measure tool. Some people found this very useful to just get quick estimates of distances or areas when out in the field. You can select the measure tool and identify a area which you'd like to get a rough idea of how large this area is. We could toggle this to square meters, and it's about 100,000 square meters. So certainly could be very useful for estimating distances and areas right out in the field. All right, so with that, what I'll do next is just go through the quick demonstration of actually creating a record. So the thing I'd like to stress to keep in mind is what Mitch referred to earlier about the iMap data schema. So iMap 3 is an observational database, and everything is tied to a searched area. So that's essentially, each time you survey is essentially a new searched area. And from that, you can then tag the presence records you're finding out in the field, as well as if you're actually surveying for a particular species and do not detect it, that would represent the entire searched area. And you can also tag treatment records to the searched area. So the idea here is we've tried to replicate that as much as possible in Collector with the goal of keeping things as organized as possible. So what you can do is, create your searched area and then tag additional records to it. And this really helps us from a database perspective when we're creating records in iMapInvasives, keeping everything organized and connected properly, so we know which treatments are targeting, which areas, and so on. So it's very powerful to have that functionality all right in Collector. So I'll go ahead and create a new record by selecting the large plus icon, blue plus icon down on the bottom right of the screen. And so what it's first prompting me to do is actually create the polygon for this searched area. And essentially, if you have the GPS for your device enabled, you will, this point will jump right to your location. It's very useful. And then at that point, or at that time, you could simply select add point, and it would create a polygon vertex at your location. Now, one thing to keep in mind, we do realize this is a bit confusing. I'm not sure why Esri used this phraseology, but it says here right on the middle of the screen, add point. But in reality, what's happening is it's adding a polygon vertex, which true is technically a point, but we have found this to be a bit confusing because you may think you're just adding a point record, like for a presence, but in fact, it's just adding that polygon vertex. So what you could do then, if you had GPS, you could walk another 10 meters or 50 meters or so on, and then create another point. Since I don't have the GPS enabled for the purposes of this presentation, what I am going to do is actually just drag the map to the next polygon vertex I want to create. And you could do this in the field as well, even if you had GPS enabled to manually delineate an area. So I'll go ahead and drop another polygon vertex and another, just sort of an arbitrary area, and so on. And the one thing I encourage also practicing ahead of time is editing vertices. It's a bit tricky in this new version of Collector. I'm sort of on the fence if I like it or not, but essentially you can select other vertices, and it tries to help you make more polygon vertices that are related to that point. So just one may want to give it a try ahead of time just to get used to how that functionality works. Okay, so at this point, I've got the polygon for the searched area. Now, all I'd like to do is add a few attributes to describe it. So the way that works is below the blue button that says add point, we can see some of those searched area fields appearing. So what I'll do is just sort of scroll down a little bit and get those into view. And now we've got the full suite of searched area fields that are available in iMapInvasives if you're familiar with those fields. And so essentially, the date field is certainly required. And on Android, if you just select it, it will just jump to today's date and time. So I'll click OK. It's helpful if you know your IMAP3 organization ID, which is from the URL of the organization on IMAP. If you happen to know that, you can enter it here. If you don't, that's okay. We can always go back and fill it in later for you, or help backfill some of those records. It just makes it helpful to, get the organization connected right when you're creating the record. And so certainly then any of the other landscape, assessment type of fields that you'd like to enter can all be inputted into the rest of the searched area fields. So I'll just, for the sake of time, just select a few. Say park, and certainly you can describe the things such as weather and crew, number of hours spent surveying and that sort of thing here. So that's about it for the searched area. So now I'm ready to just go ahead and create this searched area record. And so the way I'll do that is up in the very top right, I have a check icon. So I'm going to go ahead and just select that. And perfect. Now we have a new searched area record in purple. At this point, now I'm ready to continue with the procedure I referred to earlier by actually linking those other related records to the searched area. In this case, let's create a presence point, for example. Now, this is one aspect where the new version of Collector is very helpful, because previously, if you used Collector in the past or used our iMap Mobile Advanced, you had to scroll all the way to the bottom, pick the related field you wanted, and there's just a lot of scrolling, and I didn't necessarily like the way that was set up. Thankfully, though, now all you have to do to actually connect this record to your presence records or treatments is just find this link icon down in the bottom left, and I see I have a zoom icon too. Let me see if I can move that out of the way. Okay, perfect. Just to avoid any confusion. So again, down in the bottom left of the screen, we have this sort of appears to be a chain link icon. And so all I'll do is just go ahead and select that. And now we can see we've got the full suite of other records I can link back to this searched area. So I'll go ahead and just select a presence point, which is second from the bottom. And we can see it's a new record, so there aren't any currently. And I'll just go ahead and click add to add a new presence point. Now at this point, again, if you have GPS enabled, it will jump right to your location, your current location. In my case, I'm just going to sort of move the map to put that point right in the searched area record I've created. And I'll click update, and it moves it right there. Next, you're prompted with a few fields just to describe this presence record, because keep in mind, many species can be linked to one presence point or presence polygon or presence line. So at this point, it's prompting for my IMAP person ID. This is available if you sign into IMAP, go up to the top left menu online and select my account, and your person ID will be right there. Again, it's just handy to know this ahead of time to make processing the data easier later. Again, date and time, I'll just say it's current date and time, and you can enter the time spent searching for this particular presence record if you wanted as well. So that's it for that presence. And so now I'll select the checkbox in the upper right to create that. And now I'm ready to identify which species were detected at this presence point. And so to do this, again, it's just a matter of going to the related records down at the bottom left using that link icon. We can see we have present species. Select that. And I'll go ahead and select add. And now we have the full suite of presence fields that you're likely familiar with from IMAP, including certainly first and foremost the species. You can search by common name or scientific name. They're all loaded into this list, so you don't have to pick which, if you want scientific or common names, just start searching and your species should appear immediately. I'm just, for the purposes of this, going to select fake species to prevent any email alerts from going out. And so then, of course, now you're at the point where you can describe that species that you've identified. And it's like, thing to consider here is that we aren't quite able to filter out the different taxa types here in Collector. So unfortunately, you may see certain fields that may not be relevant. For instance, if you're collecting data about a plant, you may see a few insect fields. Just feel free to complete the fields that are relevant for your particular record. So fake species we have considered a plant, so I'm just going to select a few attributes to describe it, including distribution and its phenology. And there we go. So you can also here attach a photo from your photo library or take a photo using these icons toward the bottom third of the screen. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm just going to skip that, but that's also very handy to have. So at this point, I'm ready to go with this species record. So I'll just, again, select the done icon in the upper right, the check icon. And now we've got, a presence record with the not detect, or I'm sorry, presence record with the present species, all linked to that searched area. So at this point, I could continue adding more species if there are more invasive, species that I'm identifying at this particular point. I could also go back into the searched area, which I'll do now by going down into the link icon and navigating back to that searched area. And so now I can perform other, tasks to link data to this searched area. For instance, let's say I also pulled any of the, fake species in this case that I detected at this point. So what I'll do now is go to that link icon in the lower left, and I'll select a physical treatment record, which is towards the middle of the list. Now we are prompted to go ahead and add that physical treatment. Again, this is just the standard polygon creation that I referred to earlier, similar to the searched area. So I'll just go ahead and create a polygon that, is in the area of that point I created. And then we've got all of the attributes available for this treatment record. So for instance, species, again, I'll go ahead and say that it was for this quote fake species. And we have a few just general, fields to describe the treatment. So I can say we pulled all visible plants. And then I'll go ahead and say done in the upper right. The other thing to note for the physical treatment, there are also some other related lists you can tag into a physical treatment record. So for instance, mechanical methods, for example, as I mentioned, in the comments that I pulled all of the species I detected. So I'll go up to the top and say I add a mechanical method for pool. And I can go ahead and say done. So as you get familiar with the tool, feel free to just identify all of those places where you can link in the various data to keep it all organized. Oops, back into the home screen. All right, and so that's an example of our searched area. It has, again, a presence point with the present species, as well as a physical treatment for that species as well. The final thing I'll just show briefly is that you can also, again, add that not detected record to represent that you were actually surveying for a particular species but did not detect it. So I'll go ahead and go back into my searched area, and we'll note that back into our link icon down on the bottom left, and we'll note that not detected species is an option. I'll go ahead and select that. Now it's important to keep in mind, again, as I mentioned, not detected records are representing that entire purple searched area. So there's no polygon we need to draw here because it's just representing that searched area. So I'll go ahead and click add. And let's say it was looking for southern pine beetle, I guess we could use. I'm not, of course, sure if this particular area would even be a habitat for that. So apologies for my not as familiar with Long Island. But for the purpose of this example, we'll just say we were searching for southern pine beetle and we did not detect it in this entire area. And so there aren't a whole lot of fields for not detected records, just your user or your person ID again, the date and time. If it jumps way back to a date in the past, you can, at least on Android, go into the date and then up to the upper right menu and select today to jump back to today's date and time. Although we do have an important field in the not detected for a reason for not detecting. So if you happen to know that treatment has been applied at this area for that particular species, you could enter that. If you know it has not ever previously been detected, you can select that down at the bottom. So that's also very helpful, I think, for managers identifying the level of confidence in a not detected record and the reason why perhaps it was not detected. So again, you can take a photo here and add additional comments, but for the sake of this example, I think this is looking good. So I'll just select done in the upper right. And there we go, that has been associated with that searched area. So at this point, I think that's pretty much the extent of the live demo I was going to show. If anyone has any questions currently, feel free to enter them into the chat box. Like we said, I think keeping in mind that iMap data schemas is definitely important when using this particular tool, just because it's really, that's how we associate all of the records together to make it very organized and make the transfer of data into iMapInvasives as seamless as possible.
Hello,
So
John. Can I ask a verbal question?
Sure.
It's about the search areas. If multiple partners are searching the same area over a period of time, over years, is there a way to share the search area universally with several users, if that makes sense, or
Yes.
rather than create multiple search areas?
That's an excellent question, and it's sort of multi-part to the answer. And that actually leads me to another thing I should have mentioned as well. So I'll start by saying in iMap Mobile Advanced, you can edit any records you create. Now, you can also add to other records that others create. So what I mean by that is, actually, if I use LIISMA actually as an example, I believe you have created some of this data over here. So essentially, I can identify that record. Now, also keep in mind, I'm the sort of administrator for this layer, so I can really see everything. But we can see I can load this record that LIISMA had created earlier this month. And for the sake of example, I could actually go into your record and add my own data. So for instance, I could add my own presence points, presence polygons, not detected, and so on. However, I can't edit anything you have input into the tool. So we find hopefully that's a good balance between allowing for some collaboration while also ensuring that, you know, any of that information you're inputting is your own, and you can feel confident that no one will just go in and, you know, delete it or edit it. So that's sort of the first part. The second part of the answer is that, again, we consider IMAP more of an observational database. And so with that, we definitely encourage each year to create a new searched area. You know, that I think better represents, you know, this, you know, in year one, you surveyed here and you identified, you know, perhaps the, you know, extent of this particular invasive. And then, you know, the next year, here's the area that was, you know, searched. Here's the extent of that infestation, to sort of help get a sense of, you know, if a population's changing over time. So yeah, I'd say, you know, part of it, yes, you can collaborate to some extent, but also try to make sure you use new searched areas for, you know, different years of surveying. Hopefully that makes sense.
That makes sense. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure. All right. So I think that's the extent of what is going to show on the tablet. So Mitch, I'll toss it back to you to discuss some of the offline capabilities and the crosswalk into iMap. And I think I need to stop sharing the screen.
Hang
here.
on, John. We do have one question in the chat box. The question is, does this behave well when there is a lot of time between collecting polygon vertices?
So the answer is yes, I believe, if I'm understanding. So in terms of, let's say you wanted to create a polygon vertex and then maybe walk for, I'm not sure, you know, how much a lot of time is, but, you know, maybe 15 minutes or something like that. Yes, it should remain in the background of, you know, if you have collector open and then you know, close the, you know, press the lock screen on your device and then walk a ways. You may want to test that, because I'm not sure how many people, I get the impression most people are, you know, creating a polygon and then, you know, saving it and then moving on to the next one, all sort of in one time. But to my knowledge, that should work, you know, by sort of keeping it in the background, creating a point, walking a ways, creating another vertex. But certainly you may want to give it a test run ahead of time and you know, check that works as you'd expect. All right. So Mitch, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. So thank you, John, for that live demo of how to use the app. Now I'm going to go over how to get offline Basemaps set up so you can use this in the field, as well as how to sync the data back to ArcGIS Online. So first you have to initiate the download of an offline Basemap. So while you're in connectivity, so probably at home, in normal circumstances, maybe your office, before you're going to go out into the field, or you could even do this now, well in advance of when you're going to go out. So you have to get into Collector, find the iMap Mobile Advanced app, and select the menu at the top right of the map listing, or menu at the right of the map listing. So you can see in the picture, there's that little pop-up that says map details or add offline area. So you would select add offline area. Then it will pull up to this screen, and this is how you create your custom base map area within Collector. So you pan the map to the area that you would like to access. So zoom in or out based on where your survey sites are. And then be sure to specify the level of detail to download. So you'll be able to zoom in and out, and it will tell you the level of detail at the bottom in that white box. So there it says street. That's a fine level of detail to use. You could zoom in a little bit more to do buildings, but you wouldn't want to zoom in much more than that because the file will be very large. And so then once you've got that set to your preferences, you can download the area with that blue download area button, and just be patient because sometimes this can take 20 minutes to download. The larger the area and the more higher level of resolution you want, the more it'll take to download. But once you have downloaded it, you are ready to use the offline, you are ready to use Collector anywhere within that offline map area. And so once you go out and do that and collect your data, the data will be on your device, and you need to get that onto ArcGIS Online. So once you're back in connectivity, you open up the Collector app again and get to the IMMA map again. And when you're in connectivity and you have some edits, you've added records, you'll notice that the number of records you've added will be indicated next to the sync icon, so that circular arrow icon. And so you select the sub menu on the right, the 3 stacked dots, and you choose sync. And so this will upload the records to ArcGIS Online. And again, just be patient, depending on how many records you've added and you're trying to upload. It may take up to 15 minutes, especially if you have photos included. And all right, so we've gone through a lot so far. The next thing I'm going to talk about is data management. So what you do with the data in ArcGIS Online once you've synced it from your device. So you log in to ArcGIS Online, and I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but at the top there's these options and you choose groups, and so that's where you will find the iMap Mobile Advanced. And I'll just reiterate that this would be after you have given us your ArcGIS Online username and we have invited you and you have accepted the invite. So once that has happened, then it will occur here. And if you are an active user, you might have many other groups as well. So if you click onto that group, the page will look like this, and you want to get to this iMap 3 Mobile Advanced online map viewer. You want to open it in Map Viewer to see your records. Let's click on that. And then you will see all the records in Map Viewer, and you can zoom into the records that you've uploaded and you would like to review. This is how it appears here with the same symbology as on your device on the Collector app. And just so you can click on a record to get the details. It'll show you some fields just in the pop-up there. And you can click that edit button or show related records. So those 2 buttons that are highlighted at the bottom of this pop-up. And so when you go into all of the fields of that record, one of the fields is ready to upload to iMap 3. So once you have looked at this record and confirmed that it all looks correct based on what you saw in the field, you can select yes, and that means that the next time that we run crosswalk to the iMap database, this record will be included. So click yes once you're ready. And then it will, so the crosswalk, we do that periodically. We've discussed maybe doing it weekly, but also if you've put some data on through this app and it's gotten onto ArcGIS Online and you really need it to get onto iMapInvasives as quickly as possible, you can always email us, and we're open to doing this as requested as well. And this new field will be added called IMAP3 Searched Area ID, which you can use to search it on iMapInvasives. So this is after the crosswalk has occurred, it'll appear on iMap. So this searched area number is the same as I just mentioned earlier. And so this is what it will look like in iMap. So it'll have the same polygon and the points, the presence points within it. And just to recap all of that, so you sign in to your ArcGIS online account, navigate to the groups and select iMap Mobile Advanced, or IMMA. And then you load the iMap3 Mobile Advanced data layer, and then you browse the map or use the filter tool to find target records. And then you select the searched area record you would like to have crosswalked, select edit, change to ready for upload in iMap3. You change that to yes. And then you contact us to run the crosswalk procedure, or just wait for the periodic crosswalks. And with that, that is all the material we wanted to go through today. So I'll just do some quick wrap up and then we can get to the questions period. Just to show where this app fits in with our other apps. So we went over IMMA today. So it's boxed in dark blue, but we also have the iMapInvasives app, the basic mobile app, or sometimes called the classic mobile app, for more simple data collection. And we also have SAS Pro for specifically geared towards aquatic surveys, and a forest pest data collection tool as well. And if you're interested in any of these, you can contact us. So thank you everyone for joining us. You can start entering questions into the chat box. We can also unmute ourselves in a minute to ask questions that way. I just want to mention that we do have some upcoming webinars. We have one during ISAW, or New York ISAW, so that's that first one on the right side, Exploring and Reporting Invasive Species with iMapInvasives. So that will include a training for the basic mobile app, getting you all set up with an account on iMapInvasives and setting up the app. And then in June, we also have a webinar to kick off our annual invasive species mapping challenge. So we have several experts on different species that we're including in this invasive species mapping challenge. They include jumping worms, European frogbit, and it's a lot of fun every year. Winners get small gifts, like the top reporter for each region. So if anyone's interested in that, please stay tuned. And so these are both more geared towards the mobile app data collection for any of you who do not have access to ArcGIS Online or don't have a need for this advanced data collection. So thank you, everyone. Any questions? And also thank you to Bill and Lindsay for inviting us to give this talk.
Perfect. Thanks, Mitch. I actually already have another follow-up to Beth's question from earlier regarding the time between collecting polygon vertices. I neglected to mention during the demo, because I didn't have a good way to demonstrate how it works. There is a very handy feature on Collector that is called the streaming feature. And basically what it allows you to do is, turn on the streaming feature as for your searched area or presence polygon or treatment polygon. And basically then at a set interval of time, I believe it's 15 seconds by default, and as long as you have the adequate GPS accuracy, what will happen is the collector will go ahead and automatically create those polygon vertices at that set interval of time. So, you can walk the perimeter of what you're trying to map, as a polygon, and just sort of, you don't even have to, worry about selecting anything or tapping anything on the tablet. You just sort of walk and it will go ahead and construct that polygon for you right out in the field. So that could be another very handy feature to use for, making that polygon creation a bit easier. And next, regarding a copy of the presentation, yes, we can certainly share the presentation. It looks like the call is being recorded as well. We also have another recorded webinar that's available on our YouTube page as well, that you can always refer to, although that particular presentation may be more suited to our Collector Classic tool. But yes, we certainly have a variety of documentation. We're also working on, hopefully in the next few weeks, on some quick guides for, sort of the basic tasks for using IMMA, just, getting started, as you mentioned, going back and marking the records as ready to upload, and those types of things. So those aren't quite ready yet, but we are working on some of that other supplemental help documents.
And I just want to add that you'll be able to find those on the NYIMapInvasives.org website once we work on those and get those up there.
Just want to add that, yes, this presentation is being recorded. It'll be available on the LIISMA website, which is LIISMA, LIISMA.org. And we'll also share it with the iMap crew to post on their site if they would like.
That'd be great, thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question, John and Mitch. It has to do with the base maps. If LIISMA covers a large region, New York City, Long Island, would you recommend using one base map, which seems like it would be a very large file? Or is there a way to use multiple base maps, say by county?
Great question. And that's sort of what we've been working through. And the good news, like I said, is that now Collector, the new version of Collector, does actually support multiple offline areas. So this has been a big shift for us, even in the past few weeks. So I would say it depends on where you're surveying. In general, if you have the file space on your tablet and the patience to wait for the download of the offline area, I'd say go ahead and try to just create all of Long Island as your offline area. The initial download may take a very long time, especially if you're using a very detailed aerial imagery. It could take, I don't know, possibly hours to download. But once it does the initial download, then it's ready to go anywhere in that whole area. And the subsequent sync process should be very, very fast, because it just, at that point, just needs to upload any changes that you've created. So that's certainly one way of doing it. If you think you're only really going to be in certain areas, then you may want to go the route of just creating several smaller offline areas. So yeah, I guess unfortunately the answer is probably that it depends. And again, part of it may be slightly limited to the amount of storage space that's on the device. So you may want to just keep that in mind. And some ways to mitigate those issues are, if you don't have quite enough space, you can just, always select a slightly less higher resolution area for the, those base map tiles that get downloaded. And then finally, the final thing I'll say is that, I feel like Long Island probably has slightly more cellular reception than compared to other places. And so if with complete certainty that where you're going has cell service, you may want to consider just using it while connected to the internet, using using your smartphone or a hotspot from your smartphone or something like that. So that certainly could work as well, because then you really get that full detailed, base map right when you're, as you're connected to the internet, and any changes you make will automatically be uploaded to our ArcGIS Online account. So yeah, it's a great question.
Okay, thank you. Good answer. Great answer. Any other questions out there? Okay. And if folks have questions after the meeting or next week, there's email address here. Well, you can always contact Lindsay or I, and we can direct you to the right place. And plus there's the iMapInvasives email address here. The website is here. There are a lot of answers to questions can be found on the iMapInvasives, the New York iMapInvasives website. All right, well, I want to thank John and Mitch and Meg. Thank you so much. That was great. And I learned a lot. We've used it a little bit, but I'm still learning. So that was excellent. And I encourage everyone to use this app. It's good for present times, keeping track of what we do, but also creates a record for the future of what we're doing as far as surveying and managing invasive species. And it's an important record. So I encourage everyone to use it. And that's all for today. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for coming. We had a good turnout, and have a wonderful weekend.